Welcome into the Diamond Sun, where we bring the bright future into the present.
As we face many intimidating realities, we want to hear from and be inspired by people who either have journeyed or who have an educated hypothesis on how to travel from the dark night into a better world.
Today's guest is my friend Scott Drummond, extraordinary person, kindred spirit. He had a near-death experience over 40 years ago where he woke up with a death certificate on his chest. The memory never leaves him. Scott's been married for over 50 years, right? And which is a feat in itself. And he served 2 missions with his wife for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is another big thing to do. And he's a Vietnam veteran and an athlete. He played basketball for the Army as well as baseball. And then he played pro basketball in Germany. He was a U.S. postmaster for over 30 years. And he recently published a book called What Dying Taught Me About Living. And he's also written a children's book that is due to come out soon called What I Know About Heaven. Currently, he's in the process of making a major motion picture. And we invited him today because of his profound experience that gave him a unique lens of how to see the world and how to act in it. Because of this experience, we are curious to know what his thoughts are and his ideas for humanity during this time of possible global crisis. What can we do? I first want to start out with a definition of a near-death experience. A near-death experience is a profound spiritual event that happens uninvited to some individuals at the point of death. That is a description by Raymond Moody, who's sort of the father of this NDE experimental time. And another great definition is a profound alteration in consciousness that can occur when someone is close to death or has died. And most NDEers have no heartbeat, blood flow, or neuroelectric activity during their NDE. And most people seem to describe similar experiences. And this is not due to prior expectations. Only 33% of the NDEers were aware of NDEs before they had that. And it is about 12% of people say it's consistent, their experiences were consistent with their beliefs. So Scott today brings his extraordinary experience. And so I was just curious if you would tell us kind of a quick synopsis of your experience or what you'd like to say about it. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you and your viewers. My experience was something that I never asked for. Never would have even thought would have ever happened to me. It all started on a skiing trip. A very simple, fun day up on the mountain. And what I was doing is enjoying the day, being kind of selfish at the time. It was at Christmas time, and I left my family and went up with a friend. And we spent the day skiing and just had a ball. Well, during the early morning hours, about 11 o'clock, I was standing in the lift line, and a lady come down, and poles going every which way, and we were just sitting there talking and bragging about our runs and jumps, and she ran into us. Not thinking about what really happened, but when she knocked us all over, we picked her up and got her on our way and started skiing again. Well, we went until the end of the night, and at the end of the night, we went down to the car, and I started taking off my skis, put my poles away and my boots, and when I reached down to take my left glove off, there was nothing wrong with the left hand. Took the right glove off, and my fingers were going up, but my thumb was hanging down to the side of my wrist. And what had happened is when the lady came down and it hit us in the ski line, it totally took my thumb completely out of the socket and was only hanging on by skin. Well, a lot of people have asked, why did you feel that happen? Well, it was cold. And if you ever have your hands in a ski glove, it's held pretty tight. And the only thing you have to do is hold on to your poles when you're going down the hill. Well, because it was cold, I did not feel it. But when I got in the car and the car started heating up, I started to feel it. And it was funny because the guy that I was with was an EMT, and he looked at it and said, "Scott, I can't fix this with a Band-Aid. There's something else we got to do." So we called down to my wife, and which was about an hour, a little over an hour away, and she made arrangements through the hospital to have me taken care of. Now, to kind of give you a little bit of background, when I was when I was younger, I was on kind of on the wrong track. It was all about money, and my look on life was to provide for my family, but to make a lot of money, and I was on track for that. My goal was to retire at 32, which I was right on in line of doing at the age of 28. So my relationship with my wife at that time was not really that good because I was always away at work. I was working 3 and 4 weeks out of the month away from home. We had 3 kids, and she took responsibility of raising our kids, basically. So to put that in perspective, when I got to the hospital, she had everything set up. I was being wheeled into the operating room on a gurney, and I said, "I'll see you when we get back." And something that hit me really hard during my experience was the fact that I never told her I loved her. I never told her that to tell the kids that I loved them. At the time, we had 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl, and it was interesting to watch myself go in there, not knowing that I wasn't going to be coming out. When when I went into the operating room, they put a sheet between my shoulder, well, between my arm and where I was laying in on the operating table. And the anesthesiologist was called away. There was another emergency that was going on there in the hospital. And the doctor said, "There's no problem. I've done this procedure called bear block many times." And what it is basically putting a tourniquet on your right arm, on your upper part, on your right up here on your upper arm. And it had 2 valves on it. And the 2 valves were to adjust the pressure in your arm. So to do this procedure, they raise your arm straight up, drain all the blood out of it, put the tourniquet on, tighten it up, and then just shoot lidocaine into where they're going to be doing the local on the thumb, which at the time I didn't think it was any big deal. I trusted the doctor, figured that he knew what he was doing, which he did, and started doing the operation, and I could hear them just fine. I could hear everything that they were talking about, the nurse. The one thing that came out was the nurse had never done this procedure before. And the doctor said that he would talk her through it, which is something very calming to me. It was at the time. Well, as the operation started going, he started cutting me open. I started feeling a lot of pressure in my arm. And the doctor leaned over to the nurse and said, "Release the valve and let him have a little bit of relief." Well, she did it, and it worked out great, and he continued to do the operation. And what he was doing is he was cutting a tendon out of my arm and wrapping it around my thumb. And he was explaining to her that he was going to put a pin in my thumb to hold it in place. And everything seemed to be just fine. Well, as the operation proceeded, it kept on going, proceeded, the pressure started coming back again. Well, what was supposed to happen was the first valve was supposed to be tightened, and then the second valve was supposed to be released. What had happened is the nurse had just opened the second one. And I felt a sensation going up my arm, and I said, "Something's wrong." And the sensation was the lidocaine was going up my arm, across my chest, and into my heart. The next thing I knew, I was standing above my body watching them do the operation. This was an interesting thing to be able to look down and see a body laying on the table on one side of the sheet and watching the doctor and the nurse work with me on the other side. When the machine went flatline, the nurse went right out of the room and said that she had killed me. They did not get a pulse from me. It flatlined, and all of a sudden there were people running into the room trying to revive me. I was being shocked on my chest. I was getting stuff put into my veins. It was interesting to stand above. But what was also strange was I looked at the body on the table, and at first I really didn't recognize that person. But as I was watching them do the procedures and watching the doctor being so diligent, he was finishing the operation, and then watching all the crew that was in there trying to revive me, I looked down and realized that that person was me. It was the most different feeling that I'd ever had, because I couldn't figure out why that person wasn't moving. And suddenly I felt a real warm feeling, and there was a person that was next to me. He was standing right next to me, and I could not look at him, but I could hear him through my mind as he talked to me. And I'll never forget that, because I could hear everything uh, through my ears, what was going on down in the operating room. But when he would talk to me, it was through my mind. It was totally different. Well, as we were standing there, the person next to me was really quite impressed with what the doctor was doing to sew up my thumb. And we actually observed the doctor putting in a pin in my thumb, but it was just a hair too long. And I remember that so specifically because it was sticking out of my skin. And he ended up pulling that pin out and trimming it down and putting it back in, and it looked perfect. Then it came time for the person next to me to tell me it was time to go. And there was no question that it was time to go. And I knew that I wasn't coming back. It was evident in my mind that I was not coming back, that was my last day on earth. Well, when he said it was time to go, we left. And I was standing in the most beautiful field with flowers to my left, tall trees to my left, to far left, and in front of me and to the right were tall grass. Now, it sounds very simple when you think of grass, flowers, trees, but I felt something that was so different. I felt that every blade of grass had a soul, and every flower was facing towards me along with the leaves, as if to show me love and energy. I can't explain the energy part, but the colors were just so vibrant. They were colors that I'd never seen before. And it was very clear to me that I was looking at a 10 color wheel instead of a 6 color wheel that we look at here on Earth. Colors that I'd never seen before, and bright. But on the far left, it was very unusual because the trees were not trees that I had seen before. And it's interesting is over the last 40 years, I've been looking for those trees. And a friend of mine sent me a picture of a tree in Madagascar. and it's called a. Let me just spell it. It's BOA. It's about
Bob.
yeah, baobab tree. And he says, "Is this a tree?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. How did you find it?" And he says, "Well, when you told me about it, he said I had a feeling that it was a tree that gave life." And when you look up the description of this tree, it is literally the tree of life. And people depend on that tree for water. That tree holds up to 1,000 gallons of water. And it was the most unusual trees that I'd ever seen in my experience when I was going through it. But to find out 40 years later that that was a tree, it gave me the chills because it was something that I'd been searching for. Well, in standing in this place, it was like a panoramic view. And what I'm talking about is I could see a long ways to the left, a long ways to the right, but the clouds that were in front of me were not very far away. They were within walking distance. But the unique thing was the person that escorted me told me that I was never to look back. And I'll never forget those words, "Don't look back." Well, after standing there and looking at these beautiful flowers and strands of grass that were up to my waist, I realized that this escort that brought me there wasn't there anymore. And in thinking about this over the years, you'd think being alone, you'd have anxiety, you'd be scared, uh, wondering what's next. But it was the most calming feeling that I have ever experienced. But what had happened next was I watched my life. Now this is when I tell you watch my life, I watched it through my mind, but I lived every emotion of the other person that I was visually had contact with. I don't know how to explain that very much better than from the age of birth, laying on my mom's chest, all the way until I was 28 years old, I watched everything that happened to me. I watched every person that I had contact with and felt the emotion of every one of those people. It was it was a learning experience. It was not a bad experience. Some things I did good, some things I didn't do so well. And one thing I realized when I started getting a little bit older was in the business world, you sometimes, when you want to get ahead, you hurt people. And a lot of times you don't do it on purpose, but you do. And I'll tell you why, because you don't know where that person is in their life. And every one of us have a different journey in our lives. And I felt each one of those emotions as as I was watching. And I hurt a few people along the ways. Playing sports, you do everything you can to get to the next level. Going from high school to college is a jump, but going into the pros is a whole different experience. And you do everything to be just a little bit better than the person you're competing against. And to feel those emotions, um, like I said, hurt sometimes, but I knew that it was a learning experience. We uh, we never know what the person is that you're talking to is going through at the time. Did they have a death in the family? Did they lose somebody? Did they get a divorce? Uh, did they lose their jobs? We don't know what kind of emotions these people have. And I was able to experience living those emotions of other people. when when my life review was over, I went, "Yep, I did that." Nobody to argue with because I was there by myself. And I found out that sometimes we are our worst judges. We judge ourselves harder than anybody else will judge us. But what I learned was I could have been a better person. I could have been more in tune with what people were going through in their lives. And I also learned how that I needed to be a better listener. And I learned that I also need to be a better husband and a better father. Sorry about this. It still bothers me even today.
We're
See,
just so grateful you're saying this. Thank you so much for being willing to be vulnerable with this.
well, you know, men are self-centered, and we are. We're and driven to be the best we can. And sometimes, like I said, we hurt people along the way. So we just need to be mindful of that. After the after seeing the life review, I had a chance to just stand there and listen to what was going on around me. And what I'm talking about listening is it's a different kind of listen. The the grass had long strands and they were up about my waist. And I remember looking at the strands of grass, and the bottom parts were a very brilliant green, but the top part was a kind of a gold color, but it was all flowing towards me. Now, there was no wind, no wind at all. It was a very peaceful, calm feeling. But when I looked at the flowers and I started to pay attention to what those flowers looked like. And when they were facing towards you, there was a type of energy that comes from the flowers that I wish I could explain, but it's one that actually goes through your whole body, and you can actually feel the energy from those flowers and from the grass, and also you could feel the trees were as if to guide me to where I was going next. Well, and standing there, a voice came into my mind and told me to start walking forward. And what it was towards clouds. And I saw three brilliant looking clouds in front of me. The two on the sides were just pure white, just beautiful. But the one in the middle was was a little bit different in the sense that when you look at a white car that has a pearl look to it, you see blues and purples and you see some blacks. Well, this middle cloud had that, but it was still brilliant white. Okay. It just had those different color patterns in it. But behind the cloud was a blue that I had never experienced before. It was an iridescence type color blue. And just, it was heartwarming because it was like it was inviting you to something. When I was asked to go forward, there were rays of light that came out from behind the clouds as if to pull me towards the cloud. But the unique part was the flowers and the grass also turned with me and faced towards me as I was walking, as if to push me to the cloud. And I wish I could explain the energy that I felt. It was kind of like somebody cheering you on and as an excitement to get you to where you need to go. I I knew I wasn't going back. And I wasn't going back to my body. I wasn't going back to where I was at before, but I knew I was going somewhere else. And when I got up to the cloud, an arm came through And the arm was only up to about right here, if you can see that, coming through the cloud. And it was unique because the fingers were extended and the thumb was up in the air like this, as if to invite me to come up and take the hand. Now, time was nothing. There was no time. That's the other comforting thing is there was no time. There was a time for me that I had to grab that hand. There was a time to watch my story of myself. There was nothing that was saying that there was a time limit. I stood there and I studied the arm. I'll never forget that arm because it was bigger than mine. I'm 6'3". You know, I'm in my 260s. I'm trying to lose weight, by the way. And the arm was bigger than mine. It was an arm that looked like it was he had been a farmer or worked construction, or in the sense of a religious view, a carpenter. And I remember looking at his hands, and his hands, excuse me, were much meatier than mine, as if to be stronger. But the angle that the arm came through, the person on the other side of that cloud was taller than me. And by thinking about this all the time, and the angle, I think he was somewhere around 6'6", and I'm 6'3", just because of the angle of the arm. Then I then I was instructed to grab the hand. And I remember being this far. I mean, I was just within inches of grabbing the hand, and the words came, "It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do." And I went to grab the hand again as it started pulling away from me back into the cloud,
Mm,
and I couldn't grab it.
mm,
I had felt something that I had never felt before. It was so comforting and so peaceful.
mm,
And when people talk about it, unconditional love, I felt it. And when you have your hands that close, I have never felt energy like I had ever felt before in my life.
mm,
That energy went through his hand into my hand and filled my body. And it was something that I would I would love to have back.
mm,
The next thing that happened was I went back into my body. There was a sheet over my head. There was paper on my chest, which was a death certificate saying that I'd been dead for about 20 minutes. When when I went back into my body, I had a war going on in my body because I did not want to go back because there was no pain on the other side, zero pain. And I remember looking at my thumb and it looked perfect. It was it was it was perfect. That's all I can say is it looked perfect. But when I went back into my body, I felt pain. And helps you understand people that are going through pain because it was such a shock coming back to that pain. I remember the orderly that was wheeling me out of the room said, "Hey, doctor, we got somebody. He's moving." I can remember him saying that, and
wow.
I flipped the sheet off my head, and the doctor come over, and he had enough time to take all these scrubs off, his slippers, his feet gear, and everything, and was washing up over at the sink, and was trying to figure out how he's going to tell my wife that I was dead. Um, my wife was in the waiting room and knew nothing that was going on, nothing. And as people started emptying out of the waiting room, my wife couldn't understand why such a simple operation on me was taking so long. When the when they started wheeling me out of the operating room and taking me up to ICU, the doctor was in awe. He was white as a ghost. And he went over to my wife and said, um, "Your husband's okay. We brought him back. And with a little bit of physical therapy, he's going to be just fine." And my wife said, "You brought him back?" And he
My
said,
God.
he said to my wife, he said, "He saw tall trees, he saw colors. I don't know where he went, but he's back now." And my wife saw a whole different side than I did. You know, a single mom with 3 kids, with her husband that had just died. How was she going to take care of the kids? How was she going to put them in a home, and keep the home and support them? Her view of my story is completely opposite of mine. I saw beauty, and even today, I would give anything to have that feeling back again. Every day for me is like Groundhog Day. I I watch everything that happened to me during that experience, and I I have the privilege when I see it every day to just get a feeling or a glimpse of what that feeling was. And that feeling was unbelievable. Now, did I change overnight? No. But what I did do is I paid attention to what I saw in my experience of seeing my life review. I saw how I needed to be better to people. My number one thing that I had to do was be better to my wife and being better to my kids. And one of the most difficult things for me was being able to talk to people about my experience. People ask me why I waited 40 years. Well, I've been trying to learn what I experienced for 40 years.
Mm.
And it's not an overnight experience. Um, Speaking at conferences that I've been to, I find out that about 75% of the people that have an experience end up in divorces. Because when you get married, you're kind of going down the path together, and all of a sudden, one has an experience and really veers off the path, and the other person doesn't know really what's happening, and it scares them, and they end up getting a divorce because they're going in a whole different path. Um, I have a very understanding wife. Um, what I went through was very sacred for me, and it was something I felt like I had to keep inside. And when I started telling people a little bit about it, they looked at me as if I was an alien and didn't want to know what I'd seen because it was so foreign to what you see here. It's been 4 years now, and I was 67 then, and I was interviewed. I had a guy come up to me down at the river trail where we live, and started talking to me. He said, I understand you're not afraid to die. And I said, that's the truth. And he said, would you like to talk about it on a podcast? And I went, no. He says, well, I think you could help a lot of people and I said, no again. And then he said, with all the people that are dying of COVID, wouldn't you like to give them a little bit of hope of where maybe their parent or aunt or uncle or friend is experiencing and give them some hope? And I just stopped and walked away. Because something that was so sacred that I had planned on taking to my grave was something I didn't think I could do. When I came home, I talked to my wife and I jokingly told her that this guy wants to interview me and tell my story. And she says, well, maybe it's about time. And I trust my wife. I trust the advice that she gives to me. I have to listen. And from the experience, I started searching out ways that I could do better. And I prayed about this experience. And I said, what can I do? I mean, I'd been retired 17 years. We were comfortable. We traveled a lot. We actually, my wife and I was getting to know each other a lot better. And I went, what can I do to make this work? And it was came out so loud and clear. It was about the one. And through seeing as a selfish person, I said, well, I am the one. What does this have to do with me? And then it came out, it was about the 99 and one.
Mm.
And I realized at that time that it was time that I was supposed to say something.
Mm.
And so I did. And never, ever in my life ever thought that anything would happen from it. I went in, said it, I walked away and thought it was over. And now it's been 4 years ago. Today I'm talking to people all over the world that have had an experience or wants help in understanding what's coming in the next life. Now I don't have all the answers. I can only tell them what happened to me. And that simple podcast has almost 25 million views on it now from around the world. It was never on my bucket list to do this interview. It was never on my bucket list to write a book. It was never on my bucket list to do a movie about the book. It's this whole thing has been so very humbling for my wife and I, because we're retired. We're just who we are. This movie that we're doing right now the script is written. These two producers have been unbelievable. They have followed the book and kept it as close as they can. But you have to put a little humor in it. You have to put a little bit of highs and lows in a movie. And I know why. It's to get butts in the seats. But they have been so good to work with. We hope to have it out by the end of next year, or the beginning of 26. It's one of those things that you never hope for. I mean, you never even thought would even happen. So,
thank you, Scott. That's just a spectacular story, and I'm so moved that you're willing to share it with us. One of the things that I remember when I first met you was the first thing you did when you came out of the NDE was apologize to your wife. And that really struck me. And if you don't mind, if I could just read a little excerpt out of your book, that really struck me. It wasn't until after my NDE that I realized life was not about the mighty dollar or how I could climb the ladder. I had missed the entire point. In the next life, relationships, knowledge, and the opportunities taken to serve your fellow men go with you. Riches, accolades, and fame get left behind. They, period, do, period, not, period, matter, period. And all the people you've hurt along the path to go ahead, all the relationships you neglect, and all the opportunities to help your fellow men, and that you dismissed, are viewed in your life's review. You suddenly realize that society's expectations are grossly inverse.
Yep, very true. I didn't see any of those riches. I didn't see any of that around me. All I did is it's about how we treat people.
Mm.
And I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. I'm a man. It takes us a little longer sometimes to understand, but if I think if I can just help someone and be more observant, you know, I I, I turned into a people watcher.
Mm.
When I go places, I watch people. And, Connie and I don't have a lot of money, but the opportunity to be able to help people at different times is just, I, I'm not doing it for myself now. And it's a different feeling. Uh, sorry.
Well, I just want to say that I, you know, interacted with Connie before we did this interview, and this is what she wrote. And he's so good at noticing people who need help around us and jumping right in. He's very observant. That's how he's changed, not self-centered anymore. And he treats me like a queen, waiting on me hand and foot, encouraging me to do things that I enjoy, taking me to dinner, etc. That's high praise from a wife.
Um, I hope I deserve that.
Mm.
She's she's a good woman, and being married for over 50 years now is just doesn't happen very much in life anymore. Hearing that, but it's been, we like anybody else, we've had our ups and downs, but we've respected each other. And I think that goes a long ways if you can just respect your mate and respect for the people that are around you.
Mhm.
We it's sad that we all get in our own little worlds, and everything revolves around us. And I'm one that in my younger years, that was me. Everything revolved around me. I after my experience, I was going along pretty good, I thought. And 10 years after my experience, a friend and I went out golfing, and we got hit by lightning. And he told me what happened to me. And I, my hat was blown up off my head when I got hit in the head by the lightning. And he thought I was dead. And all I could think about was, I got it. You don't have to tell me again. I got it. And I knew why I was hit by lightning. It was to get back on track because I was drifting back into the person that I was before. And what I say, we have to learn things one day at a time, one step at a time. Um, I usually took about 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But we have to learn, and we're here on this earth to learn. And I think bottom line is learn how to be good to other people. And I'm finding that that just even smiling at people may help them in their day. If they're having such a bad day and you tell them, "Hey, your hair sure looks nice today," and you know, and they go, "Wow, maybe I'm okay." Or, just it's just a simple thing. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, um, but just to smile. Heck, the expressions that you get when you smile at people are just incredible. I'll go sit in the mall and Connie will be going in and out of the shops. I'll just sit there and watch people, and then I'll smile at them, and they'll look at you like, "What are you smiling at?" You know, and- but it's just kind of a game that I've learned how to do.
Mm.
Simple things like even walking out of Home Depot and seeing people that are struggling, putting their stuff in the back of their vehicles. It is so easy just to stop and get out and help them push their wood or lumber into their vehicle, and it's surprising how many new friends you can meet by just kind of putting yourself out there a little bit. We all seem to get into our little comfort zones, and I can vouch for this because I was taken out of my comfort zone
Hmm.
more than people will ever know.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, yeah, thank you. I want to go back to that moment where the gentleman said to you, "I understand you're not afraid to die." And could you tell us more about that? Are you
He,
not
he,
afraid to
he,
die?
no, I'm not afraid to die. That's the least of things that I even think about. In fact, if I'm ever put in that position, I'll be able to know where I'm going next, and it's comforting for me. The person that actually heard it just overheard me talking to someone else, and he said that stuck in his mind for about a year, and during that time in that year, he was going through job changes, didn't know what he was going to be doing with the rest of his life because he had kids and had decided to do this podcast. And before we even did the podcast, he never knew my experience.
Mm.
He didn't know anything about me other than I wasn't afraid to die. And so that's the rest of the story. other, other than I'm still learning. Do
Still
you have any
learning.
questions for me?
Well, one of the things that you mentioned, Scott, is that and most people that have NDEs seem to come back with some kind of gift. And I was wondering if you could talk more about the gifts that you came back with.
That's when I talk to people that have had experiences, that's the first thing I say to them. What gifts were you given when you came back? And, some people that come back, they'll have visitors come to them and ask to give messages to people. Some people will have intuition of what's going on around their area. One in particular that I have talked to is a person that's in New York, and she helps the police department with solving crimes. Um, she's not on the police force salary, but when they cannot find, where somebody has been killed or where their body is, she will, she's in tuned enough to be able to help them. I'm not one of those people. My gifts were, I see colors different. I can I can put a seed in my hand and watch it grow from start to finish and know whether or not that fruit or vegetable is good. If it isn't good, I don't plant the seed. I know when I sit down to eat at a meal, whether the food's going to be good or bad. If it's not good, I don't eat it. I have a sense when I meet people. If I get that feeling that they're not good people, I walk away from them. I don't need their I don't need that type of person in my life. Yes, I was given some gifts, and some I can talk about, some I can't, because some of them are so sacred to me. But the sense of knowing people and looking at them and almost looking through them, I can feel what kind of people they are. You know, in this life, you have people that want you to invest in things and try to talk you into buying things. Well, I had that sense where I know to walk away. Uh, can't talk about many of the other ones, but it's just a gift. I know that it was given to me.
That's intriguing. Thank you. Yeah. I was curious about, you mentioned the word sacred, and I know in your book you talk about how that it's not a secret, it's sacred. I wonder if you could talk more about that.
You know, when you and I talk, we could have secrets between each one of us, and we have to agree not to talk about those secrets. And if they come out, you're hurt. If I say something about that to somebody else, when I talk about sacred, it's in my heart, and it's something that I know that it's something I know I can never talk about. I can't talk about it because it means that much to me. And I know because of my experience, if there's some things that I talk about, I'm going to pay for later on in the next life. I view my afterlife experience as sacred. I I know that what happened to me is true. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's a dream." I said, "Well, if it's a dream, I sure see it every single day, and I know exactly where I was at. I know I know where I stand. I know what I was thinking." And in dreams come and go. I mean, I couldn't even. That's another thing is I'm not afraid to say is I don't dream. My dreams are instructional dreams. My dreams are to prevent me from being in a place at a certain time. And if I am in that place at a certain time, I know what to do. Um, and it's kept me out of a lot of trouble by having those instructional dreams.
Was this, did you have these same kind of dreams before the NDE, or is this specific since the NDE? Yeah.
No, I didn't have none of this before. None of it. Nope. It was life changing, but yet I didn't understand a lot of it. Because before it happened, being so self-centered and driven, and then being put in a position where I had to figure out people's feelings and how they lived their lives and understand their journeys is something that was so foreign to me. Uh, and I've had to learn this. Like I said, it hasn't been done in one day. It's been done over 40 years.
Mm.
I hope and pray that when I have my next life review, it will be better
Mm.
than my first one. I
Mhm.
know that I will not be reviewing what happened from 0 to 28 because I've already seen it. It'll be what I learned from 28 until my day that I walk away from this earth again.
One of the other questions I had of you, Scott, is that I know that you and Connie are very religious, and I know you mentioned before that you weren't particularly religious. And to quote Teo Lin, is that NDEs don't refute religion, but they refute materialism. And I was just wondering if you could comment on the impact that it had on your religious beliefs, or how that, if it did.
Well, it's like anybody, you have to search. You know, before this happened, everything was scientific for me. But after my experience, I knew there was much more. And when I finally figured out that if I just sat down and prayed about it and asked questions, that either I was going to get an answer or I wasn't. And I've learned a lot about faith because in order for me to progress, I had to have faith. Is there a God? Is there his son, Jesus Christ? Can that mountain over there move? Can I make a better relationship with my wife, with my kids, with friends and neighbors? I felt like I had to have faith inside of me to be able to do those things. I knew that I could not do things alone. A lot of people make decisions because they're doing it to benefit them. But what I did learn was to, first of all, listen. It's really easy for us to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But where I've been able to learn the most is by sitting back and listening, watching how the body works. You can learn a lot by looking at somebody's face or how they stand, or if they're really wanting to pay attention to what you're saying. And I think we just need to listen more. And for me, I can't do it up by myself. I learned that very loud and clear because I had a escort that was beside me. And that made me feel like if he's there helping me, then why can't I have somebody here helping me while I'm here on the earth? And so I learned how to pray. And praying is very simple. All you're doing is you're addressing God and you're thanking him for everything that he's doing for you and giving gratitude, and then voicing what's happening in your life and asking him for help in different things. And then close in the name of his son, Jesus Christ. And once I figured out that there was somebody there, to smack me in the side of the head and say, hey, you may not want to be there at this time, those instructional messages came to light for me. Because I wondered why are we getting these instructional messages to not be in certain places at certain times? And I realized that wasn't coming from me. That was coming from someone else helping me. And I think every one of us that are here on this earth have a guardian angel. And I know I do. Or I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. Because with the help of these guardian angels, I've been able to tell my story. And my story doesn't change. It can't change because I see it every day. And it's exactly what happens every day to me is visualizing my story and knowing my purpose here right now. Now, today I'm retired 20 years. And I think, why did this happen now? And, we all have those whys in our life. Why did we do this? Or why isn't that happening? But it was loud and clear that I felt like I was saved for this time because of what was happening with COVID and hopefully being able to give people a little bit hope with what's happening around the world right now. I'm so grateful that I'm here where I'm at. I'm grateful that I'm in this house where I feel like I'm safe. And how fortunate I feel to have food on the table and talking to people in Kenya and Gaza and Israel. You know, we are so blessed, and being blessed to have the things that we have is just an absolute miracle. I always wondered why. Why was I? Why am I here? Why am I here? Why? Why wasn't I born in China? Where they believe in atheism. They believe their God is their minister. There's a lot of ifs that we could think about. There's a lot of whys we could think about. I think what we need to be thankful for is where we're at now. That makes sense?
Scott, yeah, that makes sense. Scott, one of the quotes, Susie, you might have shared this quote with me. I think it's from the filmmaker Woody Allen. He says, "I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens." And
Yeah.
when you were sharing your story about pain and coming back into your body, I've listened to some of your other shares. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about pain, and do you think about pain at all at end of life? It doesn't sound like you're afraid to die, but how do you think about pain?
One of the gifts that I have learned, um, and it's kind of unique because when I was growing up playing sports, you get hurt a lot, and you have to figure out how to play through pain. And one of the things that I have learned is how to take my mind somewhere else when I have pain being put into my body. I I don't feel pain the same way as I did before. Um, and I don't know if that's a gift or what. But when I go to the dentist, for instance, I cannot take any kind of lidocaine or cane products. And so therefore, when I go to the dentist, many times I'm doing it cold turkey. And going to the dentist, there's pain. But I have learned how to take my mind to a good place. And one of my favorite places to go is to the beach of Puerto Rico and just lay on the beach and relax. And so I I know my body's going through pain, but my mind, I have a way of taking my mind somewhere else so that I don't feel the pain in my body. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I
Yes,
think
thank you.
I think in a sense we all have that ability. I really do. I think that's something that I think all of us can do if we want to. And I'm not saying block things out, but just take your mind somewhere else.
Scott, a couple of things that have come up, I think, during this interview, which is that you mentioned hope and serving people and also praying. And the after reading your book and also hearing you talk about that, my sense is that we can get help from other people, but when that all fails, to pray. And I'm just wondering if you could say more about why you think that's effective. Is that kind of a bridge to the other side, or is that?
I think it's part of being having hope.
Mm,
For me, it is. I you don't have to just pray once a day because if people that are working, maybe they're going in to give a presentation, to their company or their boss or client. For me, saying a prayer before I go in there gives me the confidence that hey, somebody's going to help me through this. Uh, it can be just simple things. Um, I think in this day and age, and you know this, Susie, we all need hope. Even watching what's happening there in your state in California, I feel for those people. But, I've heard so many of them say, well, that's just material things. I've got my family. Well, in the end, that's all you've got is your family because you can't take anything else with you. And it was interesting. I don't know if you like Mel Gibson or not, but he said that. And I went, I think he's got that feeling because you can always rebuild. You can always, sure, it's going to be tough, but we can do it. The body is made to survive. Even when you're going through pain, your body it wants to heal and keep going. And you know, you can you can feel for those people that this tragedy is happening to, but you also have to be grateful for what you have and where you're at too.
is there anything else that you would like to, any advice or anything else you'd like to say to people that is a way to deal with these times, like that ever moves you?
I don't have all those answers. I wish I could.
Yeah.
Something that if you don't mind me talking about, Susie, is when Connie and I first went into this, and I came out and talked about it, we decided we was not going to do any of this for gain because for me, having this kind of experience, I can't make money off of it. It is not something that I want to answer to because this was a gift that was given to me. And so Connie and I started a foundation. It's called the Gracie Scott Foundation. And we are helping kids with special needs. And it's been a joy because it's giving back. And right at this time, we're not making millions on the book, and we don't know what's going to happen with this movie, but we know what we're going to do with the money if it does come. And what a joy to be able to give back to these kids. And it's uh, what we're doing is we're being able to help them go to camps. They have the camps. They provide us with the information. We pay for the camps, and then the families take them to the camps. It goes a little bit further than that from what we're finding. It doesn't just affect the one child, but it affects the whole family. And the effects on the parents is so emotional because of the time that they have to put in to get these special needs kids to their programs, to the doctor's offices. And many of the people that we're finding are in the mid range where they make enough money so they can't get assistance, for their child, but yet they're just surviving to feed the rest of their family. And we had our eyes opened. We went down to called the Multi Assistance Center in San Antonio, And the person that started this uh, business had a child that they took to uh, a park, and they wouldn't let the little girl participate in the park because of her special needs. And so the father, being a good father, started up Morgan's Wonderland, which is in San Antonio. And that park is set up for kids that have special needs. All the rides and everything are made for people that are in wheelchairs or to go around a Ferris wheel and enjoy and experience these type of things. And we're hoping to work with them and bring some kind of a facility like that into Salt Lake City. Now, in the night, what is it, 1934, we had the Olympics here, the Winter Olympics, and what a joy and a dream it would be to have a facility like that here in Utah during that time when they do the Paralympics. And now you have to have dreams to see things come through. And that is one of our dreams. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. But if I have a chance to participate in it, I will do it.
Fabulous. That's adding to the list of things. Hope, serve people, pray, dreams. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, fabulous. Elle, did you have any other questions or
Scott,
thoughts?
you have shared your story, and you're sharing it more and more. I'm just curious if there's any question that we should have asked you but we didn't, or anything that you really want to make sure to mention. I just wanted to give a little space for that.
You know, it's interesting you say that because when we put together the script for this movie, the producers came to me and said, "What should we call this?" And there was no hesitation that it was to be called Don't Look Back. And, you know, I think this is going to be curious in a lot of people's minds. But what we're trying to do is where you're at right now in life, right now, let the past go and see what you can do better for the future. Uh, um, I realize that life is precious. And I say that word a lot because I know this life is precious. Pay attention to what's going on around you. And we're hoping to be able to show those type of things and give people hope through this movie. Uh, I've been so fortunate with these producers. Um, they've worked out of Hollywood. They're all about my age or a little bit younger. And each one of them, the directors have all said they want to end their careers with something that they could show their grandkids. And I thought that was an interesting statement, you know,
Yeah.
but that's why they want to be involved.
Wow. Thank
It's
you.
not all about the money. I can tell you that right now. You know, if it makes money, great. It's going to the foundation. If it doesn't, I'm not out anything. Just all I'm doing is sharing an experience.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Really, I'm so honored.
you.
We're so honored to have you here today. This really, really exquisite.
And I hope that we can help that one person that
Yes,
might need some help.
that I love that analogy and that desire. It's like if I can just get to one person, get that one sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay.
Scott, I just have to share that last last month when I listened to your story. I listened to it in the morning, um, and there was something about the quality of you sharing your story, something about just the kinesthetic experience of how it felt hearing it and how it made me feel. That it was so, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it was so visceral or tactile. And it was with me for at least the rest of the day. I think, Susie, you and I met later that week, and it still was with me. And I don't even know what to do with that, but there's a quality of peace in listening to you share your story. So thank you for sharing it.
Well, thank you. It was interesting you talk about that because before, first of all, I did not want to do the interview. I did not want to be there. And my wife and I, before we went into the studio, sat there in the car and we just said a prayer and said, if this is supposed to happen, we're here to let it happen. And when I went inside the studio, I'm going to tell you right up front, I don't know what I said. I had no clue what I was talking about. In fact, after it was over, I got out in the car and I said to Connie, I said, what did I say? And she says it went good. And I walked away from it, not thinking any more about it. And I'm just thankful that I can be a instrument in my Father in Heaven's hands to be able to help people.
Thank you.
I just want to
Thank you.
note too that, that Elle is an artist and I'm also a color analyst. So we both spend a lot of time in color. And so
Mhm.
your descriptions of color are just very mysterious and interesting and also feed my soul when you talk about it. And just the idea that grass and flowers are sending out love, it's just,
It was, you can do that through your artwork. You know, anyone that is an artist puts their heart into it. And when you put your heart into something, don't you feel what's going on in that piece that you're doing? I know you do, or
Mhm.
otherwise you wouldn't be doing it.
Mhm.
But your colors, I tried to, after my experience, I have wanted an artist to paint my experience.
Mm.
And it, we went through 10 drafts because she couldn't figure out what I was talking about. And I said, I'm sorry if you can't understand what I'm trying to get at. But, she did the best that she could. And it's a beautiful piece of art, but it is not bright enough. She couldn't make the colors bright enough. And I kept saying brighter, brighter, brighter. And she says, my colors won't go brighter. And
Wow.
so, when I see the picture, I look at that and I see what I saw. It's, and I know exactly where I was standing. I know what I felt when I put my hands out. I could feel the energy from the grass and the flowers on my hands, coming through my hands into my body. And when you do your artwork, don't you feel that when you're doing your pieces of art? You can actually feel the energy going from you to the brush to what's on that painting. And you know that
On a good day.
on a good day. Okay. So how do you get to that good day? How do you get to the good day? Come on.
Well, I would say the big realization that I'm starting to have around getting to that state is that It's not so much about how to get to the good day. The good day is always available to me. It's how to work with what gets in the way of the good day. So, for example, maybe I'm forcing the painting, or I'm forcing something, or I have an idea about how it should look or how it should feel, as opposed to honoring what wants to come through. It's almost like if I can honor the mystery of a painting or a color, or you just intuitively know, okay, chalk or brown or something over there. And, where does that voice come from? So long as I listen to that voice, it's a good day. But the minute I begin saying, oh, not brown, I don't like brown, or not chalk, that's messy. The minute I begin interrupting that, it's, things go off the rails a little bit. So, but I hear what you're saying about color or about flow, that state of feeling the energy of colors. When I'm in it, it's so quiet. And there's just an ease and a peace. It's incredibly profound, and it feels like it could go on forever.
There's just something how we get in the way of our thinking.
Yeah.
We get in the way of ourselves. And that's if we just I was taught something from my wife. She says, put your tongue down on the bottom part of your mouth and push and put your shoulders back, and all of a sudden the rest of your body is calm. It just relaxes your body. All you're doing is pushing with your tongue on the bottom part of your mouth and putting your shoulders back, and all of a sudden you're relaxed. When you're relaxed, you can think so much clearer just by relaxing.
Hmm.
And it's just little things that you learn, and you go, oh, that was a good idea. You know, we can stress, we can get into what's happening, throughout the world. But there again, we have the right to enjoy life. And if you're a painter, you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't enjoy it. So
Yes.
therefore, enjoy it. And we, little life's lessons. I know Susie's background. We've worked a little bit on this children's book. And by the way, Susie, that book, we turned it into the publisher, and they said it wasn't something that they wanted to share with their public. So it's been put on the back burner. It is done, and I can submit it. But I have to think about timing.
Mm,
And, it's not my timing. I feel like it's the timing in which it has to be done.
mhm.
And right now, my timing is with looking over the script and making sure that it's done the way I saw it and the way that I felt it, and then just get validation that everything's going to be okay. And it's much like your painting. You have to look at it and go, yes, I can do this, and this is what I feel. Now you'll never put the colors on there that I saw. Don't even try. But you can see those colors if you relax your mind and sit back. It's kind of like squinting. I got taught years ago about Christmas trees. And what you do is you step back away from it. You squint your eyes and you can see where the lights are not on the tree. Well, if you sit back and you squint your eyes and look at your painting, see what you see. See, you might change the way you're doing your painting, but yet on the other hand, it may not. It may give you just comfort.
Hmm.
So I love talking to artists because their minds are very creative. And growing up, I was not creative. I I love looking at trees. I see trees totally different now. When we see trees, the bark on trees, it looks dirty. The trees that I saw were just magnificent. The brown was a brilliant brown and it had gold tips on it. And when I'm talking about gold tips, it's just outlines of the tree. And the tree was brilliant. And you would expect branches to be on trees. Well, this one was not. This one was only the leaves up on the top. But those colors were brilliant colors. I couldn't, what I had a hard time understanding is why was I seeing the things that I've never seen before? And those are things that I've had to learn over the years is why did I see them? What am I supposed to learn from the colors or the energy that I felt coming from the flowers and the grass? When I look at grass, I look at grass much different. In fact, I found myself getting down on my knees and put my hands over the top of the blades of the grass and trying to feel that energy that I felt when I was having my experience. And I think if we just slow down and pay attention to what's going on around us, it, it will just relax you and you'll be a lot more happier. Uh, Today, I enjoy life. Because I know it's a gift to be here and to enjoy it. And I am so fortunate. I have a good wife. I, you know, I feel very blessed to have a good wife.
Mm. Thanks for sharing your love. And it feels like when you talk about the memory and also talk about your love for your wife and your life, it's like a generative experience just listening to you. And I know people have these kind of experiences when they hear NDEs, but you in particular seem to really emanate what you experienced.
I try. I, I really do. I try. That's all we all can do.
All we can do.
But remember, from this day forward, you can change. If you've had a bad experience with somebody, be the better person and go to them and tell them you're sorry. After my experience, I had to tell a lot of people that I was sorry because I actually felt what they were feeling. Let's kind of pay attention to the people that you're around. And when you're talking to them, stop, see where they're at, and just listen. Silence is good.
So hope, serve people, pray, have dreams, and listen.
That's good. Can
Thank
I
you.
use that?
Absolutely. You answered our question.
I mean, you said it. I've got to ask you.
Well, I got that from what you said. Those are the things that I got that you said that I think you're offering people. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, life's precious.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Well, Scott, thanks for the offerings. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Hey,
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure talking with both of you. I can
Well,
tell you both have, well, I can tell that both of you have good hearts. You have good hearts. You're going to be just fine. You're going to do just fine.
thank you.
Being a woman, you guys have more senses than men. Men are self-driven. Women pay attention to what's going on around them. And I believe that that's a gift that was given from your heavenly mother, that you have feelings, you have the ability to love, and you have ability to serve others. And women do that better than any man can do it. And I have a lot of respect for women that actually serve others.
Well, thank you. Thanks for noticing, but thank you in general, really. You're a treasure.
Yeah. Yeah, I sure am.
You are.
I'm an old man. I've been put out to pasture 20 years ago.
I don't think so. Either that or it's a very vital pasture.
We know about the grass in that pasture.
That's right.
Yeah, just give me a little grass, I'll be okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
Scott, before we go, I just wanted to, I'm sure somebody's told you this, but you mentioned baobab trees. Have you ever
Mhm.
read the book, The Little Prince?
No, but I write that down.
Okay, it's I believe, if I'm not mistaken, The Little Prince. It's a children's book. It's a beautiful children's book, and one of the main characters is a baobab tree.
Well, there, that's the only place that it's at is in Madagascar, from what I understand. And it's interesting to read about that because families uh, um, live on this tree. This is their life, and that's why they call it Tree of Life. And what they do is they pass it on from generation to generation to generation in their families. And what it is it's a square hole where they can get water out of the tree. And that gives their people life because they have so much drought where they live. So if they didn't have these trees, they would not have water. I can't wait to read that little book. That'll be fun.
Well, I can't remember the I'm looking it up about what they represent in the book, and I can't quite remember. Anyway, it's just, I connected the dots. I thought it was
Hmm.
interesting. Thank you. Thanks for sharing about the tree, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, something I had to learn.
Yeah.
And I felt, that it was interesting. The day that I found out about it, I went, oh, that makes sense. It's like, okay, you know what it is now. It was one of those validations that, like I said, I'd been looking for 40 years,
Mm.
and just a friend ended up sending it to me and said, "Is this what it looks like?" Because I kept trying to describe it to him, and I always thought it was a sequoia tree because they're massive and they're like pillars, but there are branches on the sequoia tree. Well,
Mhm.
I didn't see branches, and that's why that baobab tree made sense because
Yeah.
there's no branches.
Well, it
Mhm.
But it
must
was
be very validating to have that kind of evidence come forth for
oh,
you.
it was one of those days. It's kind of like you saying, "Well, um, you ponder on that. You go,
Mm,
wow,
mm.
this is real." And there again, it's another validation to what I saw and what I felt. And well, this stuff is really close to my heart. I, when it first came out, I started doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of telling about my story. And then I felt like, you know, I don't. Well, to be honest, I haven't done one for quite a while. And Susie, because I trust you, is
Mm,
why I came on here.
thank you.
Because most people don't. They want to run people through like they're cattle.
Mhm.
They don't really have a purpose for why they're doing it, other than get more people, more people, more people to tell their story. And Connie came and said, you're just saying the same thing over and over again. But with this interview with you, it was more pure.
Mm,
And what I mean by pure was I knew that we were in tune with each other. Maybe I didn't answer your questions the way you wanted, but you were so prepared before you even came to me and was asking Connie questions. Um, like I said, she saw something totally different than I did. And something that I did share with you, Susie, is I never got checked out after I got struck by lightning.
mm,
And about a year later, I started getting really, really bad headaches. And the headaches were so bad that it was sending me into stroke systems.
Yikes.
It's where I got hit in the head by the lightning. Um, they turned into hemiplegic migraines. And what that does is your veins
Ouch.
close. When they close, they get a blood clot, and it makes it like you're having a stroke because my whole left side would go numb. And the first two times I was in a wheelchair for about a year, going through physical therapy, trying to figure out how I could walk again because
Oh, a year.
I
That's a
lost
long
my
time.
hearing, my face drooped, I lost my eyesight, my speech was all it was messed up. I couldn't say what was coming from my head to my mouth, and it took four times in 4 years to finally figure out that there was a guy in Boston Hospital, Boston,
Mm.
Mass, that had done research on this type of headaches. And the doctor that I was sent to had just by mistake went to a seminar about this guy that was doing research. Wasn't supposed to even be in there.
Mm.
And he told my wife, you mind if we try something? Because this sounds like something that this guy has done research on. And so what they do is they put an IV in, and they put medicine, they do a cocktail on me.
Mm.
And because of that cocktail, it'll open my veins and bring me back to where I'm supposed to be right now, instead of going through all the rehabilitation over the year's time. Absolute miracle for me. I'm when one of those come on, I go to the hospital. And last time we counted, I've had 24 of them. I go into the hospital and they put the IV in me and I walk out. But when I'm going in there, I've lost my legs. I've lost my eyes are all blurry. I go into a comatose state, and they think that I'm having a stroke. And Connie tells them, look, my wristband, I have to wear a wristband,
Mm.
and it has the cocktail on there, and I walk out. So wherever I'm at, when I'm traveling or wherever, they'll know exactly what to do. But I never got checked out after I got hit by lightning. My friend that was golfing with me ended up having 5 back surgeries. It had melded his spine together in the 4 and 5, L4-5, and it just melded it. And so he had to wait 30 days after he got hit by lightning in the hospital for the swelling to go down enough to do his back surgery the first time.
Sounds painful.
He, yeah, yeah, it was hard to watch. It was. I drove the car up on the golf course on the 8th hole and picked him up and took him to the hospital. And I don't know how that happened because he was a lineman for Florida, University of Florida, and weighed over 300 pounds and 6'4", big, big guy. And I got into the hospital, and I still don't remember even to this day how we got in there. It was one of those, somebody
Wow.
gave me the strength to do it. Uh,
Wow. And when's the last time you had one of these headaches?
a month ago, they give me a shot called Aimovig. Aimovig is basically a preventer so that these don't come on. Then they give me a pill called Neurotech, and I put it under my tongue to try to stop it from going any further. But when it gets to a certain point, I start losing the feeling in my arm. I have to go to the hospital quick. Just one of those things you live with.
Yeah.
It's no different than somebody having diabetes. You just do it. But I see pain a lot different now. Pain is pain is really. I think pain was put down here for us so that we can learn. I think learn from what's going on in your body. Every time I have one of these episodes of going to the hospital, I say, okay, what did I learn from this? What am I supposed to do from here forward? And this is one of the hardest things for Connie, because every time I have one of these episodes, she thinks I'm going to die, and brings out a lot of anxiety into her life. And a lot of times she'll go blank because she feels like she's going to lose me. I haven't left yet, but I feel for her, because when she tells me of what she goes through, I don't like that feeling. I'd rather it be something different. Oh, but she's stuck it out with me. She's the hero. I'm not the hero. I don't know why people are interviewing me. They ought to be interviewing her, because she's a lot stronger at this than I am. That, like I told you, her side of the story is totally different than mine, and it there again, you have to take what you're feeling and try to feel what that other person's feeling, and try to understand how they're feeling, and hopefully give comfort. All right, you two.
Okay.
I've spilled my guts out. So you guys
Thanks.
go back to painting.
All right.
And
Well, thanks again.
I'll go have some lunch.
Sounds like a good plan. Thanks again, Scott. And we'll
Thank you.
circle back with you. Yeah.
Well, whatever
Yeah.
happens from this podcast, if we can help one,
Yeah.
that's all that matters to me. Just one person, one at a
I
time.
think you just helped 2 people.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if Susie really knew all of my story, but in fact, you've heard more today than I've said in probably any other interview. I've tried to keep them very simple. If you notice from the original first interview, there was no talk of religion. And I always wondered about that after I heard the interview from the podcast. But I understand now, because I've been able to talk to, people from the Muslim faith, Hindus, Buddhists. I've been able to talk to people from all over the world that I didn't know that I touched them. But when they send me messages and tell me they have, and then I get back to them and correspond back with them, I've created a new friend that I never had before.
Hmm.
And I know that is the reason for that, is that it's about that one person, that if I can help one of them from committing suicide that day, or helping them maybe reevaluate their marriages. I understand that there's some bad things that happen in marriages. I understand that, mostly with men that are not very good to their wives. And you got to respect them, for getting out of that situation. And it's to protect themselves and to protect, many times, their kids. But I know they're going to be taken care of.
It's hard to get off the line with you, Scott. This is all just so great. Really. Thank you.
You're
It's
welcome.
getting a lot of gifts from you. So
Fun to get to know you again, Susie.
yeah, it is.
Yep, we almost looked eye to eye. She's one of those 6-footers.
I'm 5'10", but I appreciate that.
I mean, that's pretty close. Pretty close. So,
Yeah.
all right, you
All
guys.
right, my
You
friend.
guys have a good day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Too.
Bye for
Bye.
now. Bye. Thanks for listening to Into the Diamond Sun. Please click the like button if you enjoyed this content. It really helps the channel. If you're curious about some of the references, see the show notes for more details. And do hit the subscribe button as well. That also helps the channel, and it lets you catch our future episodes. We both thank you deeply and from our hearts.